some of the most valuable stuff may happen before they get sucked into the culture. Could we get some of their ideas before? Okay. Once we sheep dip them, I mean, I just came from Texas, so I have these cow metaphors on, But I mean, some of orientation's a little. You ever seen how cows go through the sheep? Roll 'em, roll 'em, roll 'em, keep them doggies rolling. Squirt, next, roll 'em, roll 'em. Now, I'm not saying it's bad, but what I am arguing is we could be designers. So let me give you about 10 other ideas. One, it doesn't have to be the first day. What if all we gave them the first day was where the bathrooms were, when they were going to get paid? What if we did orientation 6 weeks after they began? Because what's interesting is 6 weeks later is when people actually want to see those questions along the way. What if we used people who had been there 12 weeks to do part of the orientation for the new people coming in? What if we never ended orientation? What if it was something you went to every year? Because all along, you've got some different situations. What if we made a set of video clips, kind of like YouTube? Not everyone doing all of them, but of some key elements along the way. What if we gave them 4 mentors? Okay, what if we gave them, and now I'm going to go a little bit more high tech, okay? What if we handed them a performance pad? We gave them a tablet, which was going to be with them for their first 6 weeks on the job, if not beyond that. And it was with them, and it had a button you could press, and you could video conference with another person somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in your organization. What I would challenge us for, and I would argue that we are going to need to become, and let's go back to that word, agile. Now, if we can't be agile about redesigning one of the least satisfactory experiences, we could go to dinner right now. Because if we can't do this, the other stuff is really hard. But I would actually argue this is the most interesting place to begin, is for us to really start to consider how do we think about becoming agile. And ironically, many of the things I'm talking about don't require us even getting high-level permission. What they really require us doing is doing some resequencing, experimenting with the flip, or even doing something we rarely do in the HROD and learning world. What if we took half the people and did style A orientation and half the people and did style B, and let's see the difference a year later in retention, in satisfaction, in engagement, or the like. Now, I'm going to argue that there are many things that are changing. So the workforce is changing. Now, I want to be really careful because we can get into something that's fun, and I'll even have a little fun with it, or if we're not careful, we can get into a cartoon. And in fact, the cartoon that we can do is we can view our newest generations or other generations as really two-dimensional cartoons. So we can say, oh, they want to wear flip-flops, they don't really want to work hard, they don't listen to their email and a variety of other things, or I just turned 60, okay? There's a whole unspoken conversation about when are those boomers going to leave? Okay, when are those? I have a friend, literally the number 2 in an organization, and she's, sort of the COO of this very, very large company. She just, on her own money, redecorated her office suite. And she said during, she had a little party for it, and she said, yeah, because this is kind of where I'm going to be working for the next 10 years. You could hear the gasps around. Because everybody was assuming they were done with the boomers, okay? She's digging in. She redecorated because she realized they might just start to remove furniture as a hint that it's time for her to go. So she's funding her own barricades, in that process. But there's a lot of interesting generational stuff going on. But we are at a place where work and the workforce are changing. Let me give you a couple random pieces. And once again, I don't want to be somebody saying, well, these numbers, they work in the US, they work in Canada. You can help translate this. In the US, we have the following amazing situation. We now have 46% of our workforce doesn't work at an office anymore. 46% of our workforce doesn't work at an office. You go to work for General Electric right now or IBM, the default is you work at home. You beg for a space, and it's only under dire circumstances that you get relocated in that process. I just did a project for the CEO of General Electric, Jeff Immelt, in which we looked at what virtual leaders were. Here's the situation they have at GE. Most of their leaders manage people they will never meet, who live in other places that they'll never get to go to. Now, it's a really interesting new world with that. Second, really, really different change, which is that a significant number of the people that we have hired in the last 10 years don't aspire to become managers during their career. What we're now seeing is they're looking around, and since many of us are managers, we aren't exactly their role model for what they want. Many of them would rather be a high-level individual contributor than be. We see it in the sales area. Historically, you were a salesperson, aspire to become a sales manager. Pharmaceuticals are having a difficult time convincing some of their best salespeople to become sales managers. They like being a salesperson. They don't want to have to manage other people. At a couple of high-tech companies now in Europe, they've now said, you manage projects, we'll give it to other people to manage people. So what we're seeing is a change, a dramatic change in some assumptions about what work is and about what the workforce is. I had this situation, and once again, I don't mean to be cartooning, but it was a little interesting. So I go out, I hire a young woman to come work for me. She's going to be my new media producer. And I'm real excited. This is her second job, and she's only been out of college for a year. So I'm like, so I say, okay, I'm not going to do that thing with orientation. So here's what I do. I go up to her and I go, hey, you and I, instead of you going to the normal orientation, you and I are going to spend the morning together. I block the morning. CEO, new hire. I'm going to go to the coffee shop with you. We're going to have a cup of Java. Then we're going to go to my office. We'll sit down. I'll talk to you about the culture. We can talk about some projects you're doing. We'll just spend the morning together. I thought she would be excited. She looks at me. Remember, brand new hire, about 23 and a half. She says, is it mandatory? What do you mean, is it mandatory? I'm giving you a half a day of my time. She goes, I know, but I've been online. I read about you. You're the one advocating all these little video modules and e-learning and like, don't you just have some clips I could view instead? Hold on. I'm offering you a half a day of the real Elliott and you want the virtual Elliott? She goes, yeah. I go, why? Now it gets worse, or better, depending on your view. She says, well, to be honest, you remind me a lot of my dad. And my father, when he tells a story, he goes on and on and on. At least, if I watch it, I can stop it and fast forward. But there's no fast forward button on my dad, and I have a feeling you've inactivated yours. Now I'm thinking to myself, have we signed the papers yet? Is there still time to bail on this hire? I said, so you and then she's realizing, for a moment, she's realizing that I'm the one who signs her check. She says, but you know what's really interesting is that if you had a video, there'll be some elements of it that are really important, and I could later watch them over and over and over again. So I feel, okay,